The moment I saw her standing in the sunlight outside the old community library, it felt like the world snapped in half into who I'd been before and who I was suddenly becoming again. Everything around me paused. The late morning breeze froze mid-whisper, the dust carried by it halted in the gold shafts of daylight, and my breath simply failed, because she was there, after 17 years, and she still looked like the one person my heart had never forgotten, even though I'd spent years convincing myself I had. I hadn't expected to see her, not today, not ever again. But fate, strange, cruel and strangely kind fate, had brought Seraphine Lawn back into my life. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that find their way back to the heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Touch of Kindness. It helps us create more stories filled with hope and healing. I hadn't been inside my hometown in years, not since my mother passed, and I drifted into a restless adulthood I never learned to control. Jobs came and went. Apartments changed every few months. I lived like a man searching for something he couldn't name. Returning here felt like walking into a life I had abandoned. But seeing Seraphine made something inside me tighten, the forgotten version of myself, the boy who once believed in promises and sunlight and forever, suddenly resurfacing like a tide pulling back to shore. She held a stack of books against her chest, sunlight brushing through her long copper-brown hair that swayed in the warm breeze. But it was her eyes, clear, soft amber, that made time fold around me. I remembered them from years ago, full of laughter in summer, tears during storms, and a fierce determination when life tested her. She was the girl who used to chase fireflies with me in the field behind the orchard. She was the girl who patched my scraped knee with a tissue she had drawn tiny hearts on. She was the girl who once stood barefoot in the river, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "When we're older, you have to marry me, Caspian. You promised." And I'd said yes, with all the sincerity of a 12-year-old who thought childhood vows were sacred. Now she stood before me again, Caspian Hale, 35, directionless, tired, and feeling 12 again. She blinked, recognizing me in an instant. Her lips parted slightly, surprise sweeping across her face before softening into something warmer, something that made my chest ache. "Caspian," she whispered, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the moment. I stepped forward, unsure if my legs were steady enough. "Seraphine." She laughed, a breathy, disbelieving sound that felt like sunshine after too many years of grey skies. You came back." "I didn't plan to," I admitted, "but I'm here." A quietness settled between us, not awkward, just full, as if 17 years of unspoken words swirled around us, waiting to be chosen. Then she said it, soft, honest, unexpected. "You promised to marry me when we were kids." I felt the air leave my lungs. Her tone wasn't teasing, it wasn't mocking, it was remembering, holding something fragile in her hands. And before I could stop myself, the words slipped out. "Does that promise still count?" Her breath caught, and she looked at me with a tenderness that tightened something deep inside my ribcage. But before she could answer, her phone buzzed, pulling her back into the present. She said she had to get to work. She was coordinating a daytime reading program for underprivileged kids. It suited her, I thought. She had always been light in human form. She walked toward the small silver car parked under a maple tree, but paused before opening the door. "Maybe it does count," she said softly, then drove away. I didn't plan to stay in town long, but somehow each day stretched into the next. I found small repair jobs around the neighborhood. I fixed a neighbor's porch railing, a farmer's fence, a broken swing set in the park. There was something calming about working with my hands, something grounding. Maybe because Seraphine had once told me I wasn't broken, just tired. Over the next days I saw her again and again. Not by intention, at least not at first. She was everywhere sunlight fell, buying supplies for the reading center, carrying sketchbooks out of the art shop, laughing with children outside the library, the breeze catching the hem of her light cream blouse. Each time she saw me, she smiled, and each time something inside me loosened, like maybe the version of me I'd lost along the way was not gone forever. I learned that life hadn't been easy for her. Her father passed away 3 years earlier, her mother's health was fragile, and she shouldered everything alone with a quiet strength that humbled me. She never complained, never asked for help, never showed how heavy her world sometimes became. One afternoon, as we walked beside the river, the same river where she had made me promise childhood forever, she told me something that stayed with me. I never left this town because I kept thinking, what if someone I once loved came back one day and couldn't find me? Her voice cracked slightly, the breeze playing with her hair as she kept her gaze on the rippling water. Someone she once loved. I wanted to ask if she meant me, but I was too afraid of the answer. As days turned into weeks, I found myself lingering in town, not out of obligation but out of longing. Seraphine carried a kind of warmth that thawed parts of me I thought were permanently frozen. She didn't push me to talk about the failures I hid deep inside. She just offered her presence, steady, calm, gentle, and that was enough. Yet every good thing in my life always came with a shadow of doubt. One warm afternoon, while helping fix the wooden benches outside the library, I overheard a conversation between two volunteers. They mentioned that Seraphine's long-term boyfriend had left her last year, left her with no explanation, leaving behind plans and dreams she had quietly carried for years. My heart twisted in a strange mix of anger and fear. I wondered if she was still healing, if she saw me as just a familiar ghost, if that childhood promise had been just a memory she said without meaning. But fate works in the quiet corners of the world. A storm rolled in earlier than expected one day while Seraphine and I were at the reading center. Rain hammered the windows, and thunder growled deeply. The children huddled nervously in a corner. Without hesitation, Seraphine soothed them with calm whispers and warm smiles, guiding them through a story about brave explorers finding their path through storms. When she read, her voice wrapped around the room like a soft blanket. I watched her, mesmerized, realizing why I'd never forgotten her. She was kindness made real. When the children were picked up and the rain slowed, we stepped outside, the scent of wet earth rising around us. She stood under the awning, hugging her cardigan to her chest. Her eyelashes glistened with the last traces of rain. "Caspian," she said, looking up at me with the same eyes that once watched fireflies beside me. "That promise, you asked if it still counts." Her breathing grew unsteady. "I need to know if you meant it." I swallowed hard, feeling the storm calm inside me. "I meant it then, and I meant it when I saw you again. I didn't know it until that moment, but you were the piece of home I'd been searching for all these years." Her eyes filled with a shimmer of emotion. "But you disappeared once," she whispered. "What if you disappear again?" I stepped closer, close enough that the warmth of her soaked into me. "Then I'll spend every day proving I won't." She looked away for a moment as if steadying herself. "I'm scared, so am I." My voice cracked. "But maybe we're allowed to be scared when something matters." The quietness between us stretched, full of possibility. The last raindrop from the awning above slipped off and landed softly on her shoulder. She exhaled, a slow, trembling exhale that felt like a beginning. "Then maybe," she whispered, "the promise does still count." The next weeks unfolded like sunlight after a long winter. Not perfect, just real. Daytime walks, simple lunches, her mother occasionally teasing that she hadn't seen Seraphine smile this much in years. I fixed broken things around her house. She painted tiny watercolor flowers in the corner of my notebook. We existed in a softness I never imagined being worthy of, but life still tested us. Her mother collapsed one afternoon while gardening. Panic flooded Seraphine's face as she called an ambulance, her hands shaking uncontrollably.